The summer of 1915 marked a pivotal moment for the Ottoman Empire, reeling from a series of crushing defeats across multiple theatres. By August, casualties at Gallipoli neared 100,000 for both sides, and drained resources better served in other theatres. However, for the Ottomans, Gallipoli carried an existential threat to Istanbul. Although they had yet to drive the invaders from the peninsula, they had succeeded in denying the Entente the high ground necessary to command the Dardanelles. The empire's future hung in the balance on their heroic defense at Gallipoli, no matter how many lives it would cost. This video is sponsored by you. Unfortunately, the YouTube environment is not great right now, with the algorithm being friendlier to drama and react channels, and YouTube being permissive of AI slop. We don't do drama and we don't do AI, but thanks to our members and patrons, our channel continues to make 3 public videos per week, with the team intact and going strong. In recognition of their generosity and contributions, members and patrons receive 2 additional exclusive videos each week, and access many other perks. Join them to watch more than 250 exclusive videos covering every era of history. Join them by scanning the QR code on your screen, via the links in the description or pinned comment, or by pressing the join button under the video. By summer 1915, the Gallipoli campaign had provoked a political crisis in Britain. The Dardanelles Committee decided to reinforce the Mediterranean Expeditionary Force under General Sir Ian Hamilton from the original 5 to 15 divisions, as the Ottoman Fifth Army likewise expanded from 6 to 16 divisions. Hamilton planned an August offensive. On the Helios front, 4 divisions would assault Krithia to pin Ottoman forces, preventing redeployment. On the Anzac front, 2 divisions and some brigades under Major General Alexander Godley would push along the Suvla Bay ridge, aiming at Chunuk Bair, Baby 700 and Hill 971. Simultaneously, fresh British forces, the 10th Irish and 11th Northern Divisions of Stopford's 9th Corps, would land at Suvla. The Ottomans anticipated action from Anzac Cove, but were uncertain about direction and intensity. They suspected a northern thrust towards Suvla, or a southern push towards Gallipoli. They deemed a new Entente landing at Suvla unlikely, and dismissed an assault on the Suvla Bay range due to its rugged terrain. The 88th Brigade began their attack on the 6th, seizing trenches only to have them retaken by the Ottoman 30th Regiment, after suffering 1,905 casualties, roughly 2/3 of their attacking strength. On the 7th, the 125th and 127th Brigades breached the Ottoman line briefly before counterattacks drove them back. By the 13th, British casualties reached about 4,000. Ottoman casualties were estimated at around 7,500. The diversion failed to draw Ottoman reserves away from the central front, as Liman von Sanders had predicted the Heli's attack to be a feint. At Anzac Cove, the Surrey-Blair offensive began at 1730 on the 6th. 1,800 men of the Australian 1st Infantry Brigade assaulted Lone Pine, supported by the 2nd Infantry Brigade north of Johnston's Gilly and the 3rd Infantry, and the 2nd Light Horse Brigades against Sniper's Ridge. Most advanced through prepared tunnels, while others traversed trenches under heavy fire. By nightfall, the Australians had captured several posts and trenches, with reinforcements continually arriving to fill gaps, as engineers extended tunnels from the Pimple towards the new line. Colonel Ali Reza Bey and Tufik Bey launched 3 days of relentless but futile counterattacks. By the 9th, Ottoman assaults waned, as both sides consolidated their positions. The Australians had suffered 2,277 casualties, a rate of 50%, while the Ottomans suffered 1,520 deaths, 4,700 wounded, 760 missing, and 134 taken prisoner. During the Chunuk Bair operation, the New Zealand contingent, flanked by the Auckland, Wellington, Otago, and Canterbury Mounted Rifles, crossed the Rhododendron Spur and captured Old No. 3 Outpost, Destroyer Hill, Tabletop, and Bowchops Hill. The fighting was brutal and costly, with Ottoman machine gun fire and entrenched positions inflicting severe casualties. By 4:30, the northern detachment neared the apex, with only a handful of enemies remaining, but reinforced Ottoman forces soon stabilized the line. Meanwhile, the neck assault, initially planned as a rear hammer against Baby 700, began at 400 on the 7th, but a synchronization error between bombardment and advance allowed the defenders to man their trenches in time. 2 waves from the 8th Light Horse were cut down by machine gun fire within seconds. At Quinn's Post, the 2nd Light Horse Brigade attacked the chessboard position, losing 50 men before pulling back. A third wave, comprising the 10th Light Horse Regiment, attacked at 4:45, meeting the same fate. The fourth wave was to be cancelled, but it did not reach the troops in time as they charged into a hail of bullets. It was only after darkness that stretcher-bearers could rescue 138 survivors. Australian and New Zealand casualties amounted to 234 killed and 138 wounded, while Ottoman losses were estimated at just 12 casualties. Following the neck defeat, the Ottomans bolstered Chunuk Bair. By 7:30, New Zealanders pressed within 500 yards of the summit, but were pinned by the Ottoman 9th Division. By 1100, the Auckland Battalion attacked towards the pinnacle, where about 100 reached the summit and dug in after suffering 300 casualties between the pinnacle and apex. A nighttime reorganisation followed. From 3:30 to 4:15, naval bombardment preceded the Wellington assault, then the Gloucesters. By 1700, trenches were clogged with dead New Zealanders. By the evening of the 8th, of the 760 men who reached the summit, 711 had become casualties. On the 9th, Major General Alexander Godley, at his beachside headquarters, largely unaware of the fighting's state, ordered the 38th Brigade, under Brigadier General Anthony Baldwin, to seize Hill Q from the farm, aided by New Zealanders on Chunuk Bair's right and the 29th Indian Brigade on the left. The assault went painfully astray, as the force became hopelessly lost at night, with only a Gurkha battalion reaching Hill Q. With the offensive stalled, the New Zealanders on Chunuk Bair faced Ottoman counterattacks at the apex. By dawn on the 10th, General Mustafa Kemal's counter-offensive overwhelmed 2,000 men below Chunuk Bair and 3,000 around the farm. The Ottomans then withdrew, leaving the main ridge and farm as no man's land. The Battle of Chunuk Bair cost the Anzacs approximately 18,000 casualties. The Ottomans reported roughly 9,200. Meanwhile, at Suvla Bay, the 32nd and 33rd Brigades of the 11th Division landed at Beach B just before 2200 on the 6th. On the 7th, 2 companies of the 6th Battalion Yorkshire Regiment overran Lalababa Hillcock, suffering most of their officers killed or wounded and about 1/3 of all ranks lost. Shortly thereafter, the 34th Brigade landed at Beach A, with the 11th Battalion Manchester Regiment capturing Kiret Tepe Ridge and pressing eastward, suffering about 200 casualties. Elsewhere, landings were chaotic and confused, with units becoming mixed. At dawn, Hill 10 was taken, as the Royal Australian Naval Bridging Train worked to build piers to receive subsequent waves. 2 brigades of the 10th Division came ashore and captured 2 hills east of Salt Lake by evening. However, by 1900, the British 9th Corps had suffered 1,700 casualties, and the chain of command had utterly broken down. British plans had anticipated that Ottoman reinforcements to Suvla would take about 36 hours to arrive, but progress was disappointingly slow. On the 8th, General Ian Hamilton visited Suvla and ordered the 32nd Brigade to advance to Teke Tepe Ridge overnight. They reached the ridge at 400 on the 9th, only to be decimated within minutes by Ottoman reinforcements under Mustafa Kemal. Survivors retreated toward the beach, as Ottoman fire from Scimitar Hill and Kiret Tepe intensified. Despite reinforcements, the 53rd Welsh Division arriving on the 9th and the 54th East Anglian Division on the 10th, British hopes for a rapid breakthrough at Suvla faded, as the Ottomans tightened their grip on surrounding ridges. On the 15th, Stopford was relieved by Major General Sir Julian Byng, with Major General Beauvoir de Lille temporarily taking command. On the 19th, elements of the newly arriving Australian 2nd Division reached Anzac Cove from Egypt, as the 29th British Division was moved from Helles to Suvla. De Lille aimed to hold and connect with the Anzac forces to the south, targeting Scimitar Hill, Hill 60 and the W Hills. On the 21st, the 29th British Division attacked Scimitar Hill, as the 11th British Division assaulted the W Hills. The British faced mist and smoke that hid their targets, while the Ottomans enjoyed clear fields of fire. The 11th British Division's assault collapsed as the Royal Inniskilling Fusiliers briefly captured Scimitar Hill's summit, but came under devastating fire from Anafata Spur and the W Hills. The 2nd Mounted Division advanced from Lalababa at 1700, but became easy prey for Ottoman artillery, rallying near Green Hill, only to be repelled from Scimitar's summit. In a single day on Scimitar Hill, the British suffered over 5,300 casualties. The Hill 60 action began at 3:30. The New Zealand Mounted Rifles seized their objective at 400, but the left and right flanks, held by the 29th Indian Brigade and the 4th Australian Brigade, had not yet formed solidly. Terrain complicated their advance. From Hill 100 towards Hill 60, the Kayajik Dera Valley allowed Ottoman fire to dominate, forcing crossings under fire and causing burned casualties as undergrowth fires spread. By 1900, the Connaught Rangers linked up with the New Zealanders on the right, though a gap persisted to the Australian 4th Brigade. On the 22nd, the Australian 18th Battalion reinforced the attack, but suffered 383 casualties at dawn. A lull lasted until the 27th, when the 9th Light Horse Regiment made some progress up the slope. The 10th Light Horse Regiment joined the fight, and by the 28th, some trench work atop Hill 60 was captured, but the Ottomans retained the northern face, overlooking Suvla. Continuous fighting through the 29th culminated in the final assault on Hill 60, with Anzac losses around 1,100 and Ottoman casualties comparatively lighter. The Hill 60 struggle continued, but by the end of August, Ottoman control of key positions remained. The August failures created a strategic dilemma for the Dardanelles Committee. With a new offensive in France looming and only about 25,000 reinforcements available for Gallipoli, Hamilton shifted to a defensive posture on August 23rd. The Entente's setbacks at Gallipoli influenced Balkan politics, contributing to Bulgaria entering the war on the side of the Central Powers on October 15th, prompting Serbia and Greece to request 150,000 troops to bolster defences, further straining Allied resources at Gallipoli. Amidst these strains, the Entente began planning evacuation as a reluctant but necessary course of action. On October 16th, Hamilton was relieved by General Sir Charles Munro, who persuaded Kitchener to approve an evacuation. The Central Powers' seizure of Niš on November 5th established a rail link from Belgrade to Istanbul, accelerating Ottoman logistics and the Entente evacuation. From December 9th to 20th at Suvla and Anzac Cove, and December 24th to January 9th at Helles, over 250,000 Allied troops were covertly evacuated with relatively light casualties. The 259-day battle over Gallipoli had cost over 100,000 lives, including up to 56,643 Ottomans, 34,071 British, 9,798 French, 8,709 Australians, 2,721 New Zealanders, 1,358 Indians, and 49 Newfoundlanders. Of over 800,000 men who fought at Gallipoli, 500,000 became casualties. Rather than hastening the end of the Great War, Gallipoli ironically lengthened it considerably. The Turco-German alliance stood stronger than ever. Efficient rail links enabled the rapid movement of personnel, funds and materiel between the two powers. Allied planners' fear of jihad among colonial Muslim populations intensified in the wake of a brilliant Ottoman victory. The Ottomans presented a foe that the British would need to mobilize more forces to defeat, with Mesopotamia representing the immediate theatre. The entry of Bulgaria into the war, German efforts to incite jihad in Persia and Afghanistan, and the Allied defeat at Gallipoli compelled the British to seek prestige by capturing Baghdad. On September 11, 1915, Lieutenant General Sir John Nixon, commander of Indian Expeditionary Force D, ordered Major General Townsend to cross the Tigris from Ali Gabi with Force D and the Royal Indian Marine Flotilla to seize Kut al Amra. In response, Enver Pasha established the Ottoman Sixth Army under Kolmar von der Goltz, currently leading the Ottoman First Army in Thrace, leaving Lieutenant General Nureddin Pasha to initially direct operations. Nureddin fortified the bend at Es-Sin, deploying the 38th Division across the Sawada and Ataba marshes, building a network of trenches south of the river. After reconnaissance, Townsend devised an envelopment strategy that would push the bulk of his forces across the left bank of the Tigris, with Column A to clear the marshes, Column B to attack the rear of the southern trench line, the 18th Belgaum Brigade to pin the Ottoman front, and a cavalry unit to attempt a cut-off of retreat. At 200 on September 28th, Column B became hopelessly lost in the Suakia Marsh, delaying Column A's attack until 8:45 against a well-defended Ottoman line, while Column B gradually emerged to clear trenches with a bayonet charge. The 18th Brigade's feint faltered, and relief by Column B was required as Nureddin reinforced with 4 battalions, 2 cavalry brigades and artillery, only to be repelled by the 2 British columns. Townsend then ordered the Royal Indian Marine Flotilla to steam up the river and seize Ottoman riverboats and Kut. However, the Ottomans sank boats and laid down steel cables as they fired upon them, killing Commander Lieutenant Edgar Cookson in the process. By day's end, Nureddin withdrew to Ctesiphon as Townshend's cavalry closed in, allowing Kut to fall unopposed on September 29th. Barricades, mines and coastal guns delayed Townshend's advance for over 55 days, allowing Nureddin plentiful time to prepare. At Ctesiphon, Nureddin constructed 2 concealed trench lines across the Tigris, backed by a 20-foot ancient wall, and by mid-November commanded over 18,000 men in 4 divisions with 52 artillery pieces. He arranged an L-shaped defense, the 38th Division on the long leg, the fresh 45th Division on the vulnerable left, with the 51st as reserve and the 35th spanning the river. Ottoman artillery supported the left and centre, initially prioritizing British gunboats. Townshend left a Kut garrison, reducing him to 11,000 men, as he planned to assault Ctesiphon using 4 columns. Columns A, B and C would attack the frontal line, while a flying column would swing around the Ottomans' left flank. A night march on November 21st aimed to strike at dawn, but West Bank mines and Ottoman artillery blocked their gunboat support, and at dawn, columns A and C faced heavy fire before the first trench line, while column B breached the first trench as Ottoman forces pulled back to a secondary line. Nureddin then deployed reserves, stalling the flying column and the advance. By the end of the day, the British held the first trench, but suffered about 40% casualties, with the Ottomans close to 50%. The next day produced renewed but unsuccessful attempts, as the British suffered 4,600 casualties and the Ottoman counterattack cost them 6,188 casualties. The British were unable to properly treat their wounded aboard ships, while the Ottomans evacuated their wounded for treatment at Baghdad. By November 25th, Townshend recognized the untenable position and withdrew to Kut el-Amara, which he began fortifying as Nureddin's 18th Corps pursued them, ushering in a siege, just as General von der Goltz arrived in Mesopotamia to take charge of the Ottoman Sixth Army. While von der Goltz focused his main efforts in Mesopotamia, he also sought to exploit dissent in Persia. The Ottoman Jihad movement had largely failed in Persia, but German agents managed to cultivate influence among Shiite leaders to mobilize against the Entente. Collaborating with Ottoman intermediaries, they amplified local dissatisfaction with Russian and British occupation, notably recruiting factions within the Jingali movement. A broad network emerged as German and Ottoman operatives moved through Isfahan, Kermanshah, Hamadan, Kabala, Najaf, and Khuzestan, uniting tribes such as Tangistani, Bawi, Bani Turuf, Dashtistani, Bakhtiyari, Kashkai, and various Kurdish groups. This network aimed to disrupt British oil production and sow broader instability. By the summer of 1915, the democratic faction in Tehran's parliament had grown significantly, signaling increasing political influence and a noticeable pro-German orientation. Russian forces began surrounding Tehran from Qazvin, prompting General von der Goltz to relocate pro-German units to Kermanshah. From there, a pro-German coalition under Prime Minister Mustafa al-Mamalek moved to Kermanshah and established a provisional national government. Mustafa al-Mamalek engaged in secret negotiations with the Germans, offering to declare war on the Entente in exchange for guarantees of Iranian independence and territorial integrity. Russia responded with an ultimatum to the Shah, demanding the removal of Central Powers agents from Persia. Mustafa al-Mamalek elected to align with the Germans, who, in return, recognized his provisional government as Iran's sole legitimate authority. Simultaneously, von der Goltz forged an alliance with the Persian Gendarmerie, a 7,000-strong force led by Swedish General Harold Hjalmarsson and other volunteer Swedish officers. Through the Gendarmerie and a cadre of German mercenaries and Arab jihadists, the Central Powers fostered Persian revolts. On November 10th, a Gendarmerie under Ali Kuli Khan Pasyan, aided by Swedish captain Josef Pusset, defeated pro-British Kamsa tribal forces led by Ibrahim Khan Kavam-ul-Mulk, capturing Shiraz, Yazd and Kerman. After revolting in Hamadan, Colonel Mohammad Taqi Pasyan defeated a pro-Russian Persian Cossack brigade at Masala. In response, Russia dispatched the Expeditionary Cavalry Force under General Nikolai Baratov, with a vanguard led by General Zolotarev advancing from Qazvin to Karaj. On November 23rd, Baratov launched a two-pronged offensive from Qazvin against Hamadan and Qum. On the 25th, the Hamadan detachment clashed with German-led mercenaries and gendarmes near Elchi, driving the enemy towards Avar and Sultan Bulag. There they delivered a decisive cavalry flanking maneuver that routed roughly 900 gendarmes and 1,200 mercenaries, repelling the enemy from Borujerd, Dowlatabad and capturing Hamadan on December 3rd. Meanwhile, the Kum detachment faced 300 cavalry and 400 infantry at Lalakan on December 3rd, ultimately routing them and capturing Sava by the 7th, as 2,000 German-led mercenaries fled towards Kum. By the 9th, a separate detachment from the Turkestan military district secured the southern Iranian-Afghan border, cooperating with a British contingent in Sistan to shield Afghanistan from German Ottoman incursions via a mobile screen across Birjan, Sistan and the Gulf of Oman. Baratov's intelligence on the 9th revealed Emir Hikmet was leading a mixed force towards Tehran to seize the Shah. A countermission under Sergeant Belemestnov, comprising 688 Cossacks and 2 guns, was ambushed at Rabet Kerim. Hikmet took up a position on a mountain, pinning the Russians for 6 hours with artillery. Afterwards, the Cossacks charged the enemy, routing them and hacking 245 of them to death. This effectively secured the Caucasian army's left flank, and by late December, the Shah was compelled to appoint a new pro-Entente cabinet, with Prince Firmin Firma. Likewise, Brigadier General Sir Percy Sykes established the South Persia Rifles, drawing upon local tribes to counter German-induced revolts. While the Ottoman and German efforts to foment a civil war in Persia ultimately failed, the summer of 1915 delivered much-needed victories to the Ottoman Empire. The Ottomans had decisively defeated the Entente at Gallipoli, albeit at a horrifying cost of lives. This victory freed thousands of Ottoman soldiers to serve in other theatres. The Gallipoli victory also contributed to Bulgaria's entry into the war, allowing Berlin and Istanbul to be linked up, and allowing much-needed heavy artillery and munitions to travel to Turkey. Within Mesopotamia, after a string of defeats, the Ottomans were finally able to seize the initiative, beginning a siege of Kut. The year 1916 would see a reinvigorated Ottoman army. In the next episode, we will discuss the battles of Erzurum and Kut in 1916. So make sure you are subscribed and have pressed the bell button to see it. Please consider liking, subscribing, commenting and sharing, it helps immensely. Our patrons and YouTube members can watch more than 200 exclusive videos. Join their ranks via the link in the description or by pressing the join button under the video to watch these weekly videos, learn about our schedule, get early access to our videos, access our private Discord and much more. This is the Kings and Generals channel and we will catch you on the next one.